I don't remember all of the fencers I grew up with in my first fencing class, and not all of them I would necessarily remember fondly. But there is one fencer, we'll call her Susan, who does stick out in my mind. She was a solid fencer and a hard worker. She was always very kind to those around her, which is very unusual for anyone in a competitive sport, especially one like fencing. So one of the things that always shocked me whenever I would see her is when she would be interacting with her mother. She was often quite mean. It was hard to reconcile what I saw from her in class with what I saw from her when her mother was around. It's not that there was something going on behind the scenes, mind you, between the two of them. I think it was just that Susan was trying to fit in, and she often saw her mother talking to her as opposed to that goal. But no matter how cold Susan could be with her mother was still always there. I never once saw her mother yell at her. I never heard her say a bad word about her daughter. In fact, I only ever heard her say how proud she was of Susan's accomplishments. And she was there for every tournament that I can remember, cheering her daughter on. This is the love of a parent who, no matter how much their child lashes out at them, still loves that child. This is the kind of parent that, no matter what happens with her children, still wants what's best for them. This kind of parental love is what we see in the reading from Exodus this morning. The Israelites have just been freed from captivity in Egypt. Freed being the operative word here. The Israelites had been enslaved for generations by the Egyptians, a people who hated the Israelites so much that they were willing to slaughter an entire generation of newborn males just to keep them down. But freedom is not always met with gratitude, especially in the face of discomfort. Now that the Israelites were freed, they were trying to return to the Promised Land, the land that God gave their father Abraham eons ago. But first, they had to travel through the desert to get there. On this journey, the Israelites come to a place without any water. And at this point, they lose it. Doesn't matter now that God had freed them. It doesn't matter that they had escaped oppression. Now they just want to know why God and Moses had to take them away from all that they knew. And they get dramatic, asking why they have been dragged to this place to die. Asking why God has abandoned them. But the thing is, they've only just camped in this area. They don't have water here, but who knows? There might be water just around the corner. After all, here is the God who has done nothing but good for them. And yet the second that one bad thing happens, their entire trust in him falls apart. In this situation, God could do what it is often tempting for us at most times to do. He could yell at them. He could call them ungrateful and selfish, which would all be true. He could even just leave them to fend for themselves. But God is a good parent. He's there to support his people, and to keep them safe. And he shows them that. He has Moses strike a rock with his staff, and immediately water comes out for the Israelites to drink. In spite of all the good God had done for them, the Israelites still managed to wail against him, to whine and complain how terrible God was being to them. But just like Susan's mother, God takes the complaints thrown at him and shows his continued love and support by helping them. Sometimes in all of our lives, we can be like the Israelites. Sometimes we wail against God. Sometimes we complain about how little he has done for us. Sometimes we deny him, and we think that something better could come from not following him. And sometimes we fail to call upon him, to try to approach him, or to just try and be near him. But in spite of all this, we can take comfort, because even in the worst of our moments, God is still there. He's still there to be a love and support for us, even when we can't see the very thing we need that he is getting ready to supply us with. Even when we hate and despise him, even when we sin against him and against each other, God still loves us. God is the parent who will always love us, even when we don't deserve it. He's the parent who would do anything for his child, even if it means coming down and dying to protect his children from death. And that's exactly what God does. He came down and took on the punishment of sin for us, so that we would no longer have to die, but so that we could live. And if we can see that compassion that God has for us, we can move away from the reaction of the Israelites. The Israelites who continued to test and whine and complain against God throughout their journey in the desert. The Israelites who ended up wandering for 40 years in the desert, thanks to following their own way, instead of the path that God was trying to illuminate for them. If we can follow the example of God's love, and see that in his dealings with the Israelites and with his death on the cross as Jesus, if we allow those examples to penetrate into our hearts, then we will know that, in fact, God has not abandoned us, that he still loves us and is still here with us, even though through our own despair at many times blinds us from that fact, even though we sometimes don't see him with us along our journey. And in seeing that God does love us, no matter what grief or trials we go through, maybe, just maybe, we won't wail against him. Maybe when times get tough, we won't throw insults at him. And maybe then we can try instead to move ourselves to be more closer to him, to be more fully his.